Steve Jobs didn't just build Apple. He built an obsession. An obsession with perfection, control, and creating products so powerful that people would line up for hours just to touch them. But behind the black turtleneck, the legendary presentations, and the image of a visionary genius, there was another side to Steve Jobs that most people never saw. A side that even some Apple employees feared. At first, Jobs seemed unstoppable. He helped turn a small garage startup into one of the most valuable companies in history. The iPhone changed communication forever. The Mac transformed personal computing, and Apple became more than a tech company, it became a global culture. But the truth is, Steve Jobs wasn't easy to work with. Former employees described him as brilliant, but terrifying. Meetings could instantly turn into public humiliation. Ideas were either genius or completely useless. There was almost no middle ground. And yet strangely, many of the people who suffered under his leadership still respected him deeply. Because Jobs had something rare. He could see the future before everyone else. While most tech companies focused on specifications and engineering, Steve Jobs focused on emotion. He understood that people didn't just buy technology. They bought identity, status, simplicity. That mindset changed the entire industry. But his obsession with perfection came at a cost. Inside Apple, stories about impossible deadlines and extreme pressure became legendary. Employees worked endless hours trying to satisfy standards that constantly moved higher. Some engineers said Jobs demanded things that seemed physically impossible. And sometimes, he got them anyway. That's what made him different. He pushed people beyond limits they thought were real. But the deeper Apple grew, the more complicated Jobs became. In 1985, something shocking happened. Steve Jobs was forced out of the very company he helped create. Imagine building Apple, only to be removed from it. For most people, that would have been the end. But for Steve Jobs, it became the beginning of something even bigger. After leaving Apple, he launched new projects, invested in Pixar, and quietly prepared for a comeback nobody expected. And while Apple struggled during the 1990s, Jobs waited. Then came the return. And that return changed technology forever. The iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad. One after another, Apple released products that completely transformed modern life. But behind the success, Jobs was fighting a battle almost nobody knew about. His health was declining. Even as Apple became stronger, Steve Jobs became weaker. And perhaps the strangest part of all, some former employees say his obsession with control became even more intense during those final years. Every product detail mattered. Every presentation mattered. Every decision mattered. Because Steve Jobs didn't want to simply build technology. He wanted to leave something behind that would outlive him. And in many ways, he did. Today, billions of people use devices shaped directly by his vision. But even now, years after his death, one question still follows Apple. Was Steve Jobs a genius? Or was he simply willing to demand more than anyone else ever could? Maybe the real truth is both. Because the people who change the world are often the hardest people to understand.